Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this informational video on our IPAP funding round. My name is Drew Bourgeois. I'm a Senior Manager in the Philanthropy team at Perpetual, and I'll be joined for this presentation by my colleague Stephen McGregor, who is also in our Philanthropy team based in Melbourne. I would like to acknowledge that I'm recording this presentation on the unceded lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge that wherever you watch this video in Australia will be Aboriginal land. So we're here to talk to you about Perpetual's philanthropic grant program, Impact Philanthropy Application Program, or IPAP. Our hope is that everyone will be able to take something away from today's presentation that helps them to submit a strong application to IPAP. You have likely also heard that we're moving to accept applications this year through a new grant portal. We won't talk about this new system in this presentation, as this presentation is focused on the IPAP process and assessment, but information on how to register for and how to use the new platform, along with plenty of helpful resources, will be made available on our website in the lead up to the round opening. So I'll start by giving some context on what IPAP is and why the philanthropists we work with choose to use IPAP. I'll then share some analysis of funding insights and trends from IPAP over a decade and for the 2025 funding round. I'll then pass to Stevie to take you through the details of how IPAP works, how to craft a strong application, and some details for the 2026 funding round. So firstly, some context on Perpetual. Perpetual Wealth Management is a financial services firm that works with individuals and families to protect and to grow their wealth. Part of our service to families and individuals has been as a trustee company, which includes the stewardship of philanthropic trusts and foundations. We have been entrusted to manage philanthropic trusts for over 135 years. Today, we manage over 1,100 charitable trusts and foundations, with over $3.9 billion in charitable funds under advice. Each year, we assist the philanthropists that we work with to distribute more than $120 million to the charitable sector. Philanthropy is at the heart of what Perpetual does. It has been right since the beginning. We have a long and deep history of supporting philanthropy and impact in the not-for-profit sector. So what are we aiming to do with IPAP? What is the purpose of IPAP? I'll start by sharing two case studies of real trust that we work with to give you an insight into how granting decisions are made and what we're aiming to do with the IPAP process. The first example is a legacy charitable trust that was formed decades ago. When the founder was drafting their will, they wanted to establish a charitable trust to the benefit of their community and entrusted Perpetual to deliver on their wishes in perpetuity. The trust deed stipulates that the trust's assets are to be invested, and the benefits of those investments are to support charitable purposes within 16 kilometres of a specific regional local post office. The founder cared deeply for their regional community and wanted to create a lasting legacy of supporting that community through their estate. In this instance, Perpetual's job is to deliver in the wishes of the founder. We don't have discretion to change the trust deed. Our job is to find charitable organisations working within that 16-kilometre radius, verify them as an effective and impactful organisation, and honour the founder's charitable intentions. So that's the first case study, and the second is a very different sort of trust. The second is a private ancillary fund, or PAF, that was started by the grandparents of the current advisory committee decades ago. The grandparents started a successful business, and when they sold a significant part of that business, they made the decision to establish a PAF to support their community. In establishing the PAF, they said that Perpetual should be the trustee, ensuring that the PAF remains compliant throughout time. But successive generations of their family should form an advisory committee that helps to make decisions about which charities are supported by the PAF. The grandparents set a broad target strategy for the foundation, being social and community welfare. But they gave their family the discretion to choose beneficiaries and projects to support within that charitable sector. The grandparents have passed, and the Foundation's advisory committee is now comprised of the children and the grandchildren of the founders. When the advisory committee sets the philanthropic strategy for the foundation today, they consider the sector defined in the trust deed, what they know that their grandparents supported philanthropically in their lifetime, as well as what they see as important for philanthropy to support in today's world. Perpetual's job is to collate all of this information and provide the advisory committee with an annual shortlist of applications from impactful non-profit organisations, which align with the Foundation's philanthropic strategy for them to consider. In both of these example trusts, and in every instance where Perpetual has any discretion over granting as trustee, we use IPAP as the process by which we connect philanthropists with effective, sustainable, impact-driven organisations that are supporting their communities. Each of the philanthropic vehicles that we work with has a different way in which granting decisions are made, and often a different set of people who assist to make decisions about granting. These decision makers can include trustees, Perpetual or other trustees, the founder themselves, where they're still living, family members of the founder in informal roles or in informal roles, advisory committees, which can be comprised of family members, subject matter experts, or members of the community, professional advisors like Perpetual's philanthropic services team, Stevie or I, or other sector experts who also play a role in decision making for particular trusts. So why is IPAP an effective solution to this situation? Why is it an effective way for a philanthropist to hear from and connect with impactful non-profit organisations? IPAP was formed as a process 11 years ago in response to a growing desire from the philanthropists that we work with to do effective, impactful philanthropy, and a desire to hear from all parts of the Australian non-profit ecosystem, from small to large organisations, from every state and territory, working on all forms of important social, cultural, and environmental issues. The philanthropists that we work with chose to partner with Perpetual because of the rigour of our process, because of our deep legacy of connecting philanthropists with impactful organisations, and because of our team's experience of being in the non-profit sector. Importantly, IPAP isn't a way of us telling the sector what matters to philanthropy and making the sector change its priorities to meet the funder. It is a way of the sector telling us what matters most to the communities that you operate in and allowing philanthropy to meet the sector where it needs us to. We believe that this shift in power enabled by the IPAP process is important to effective philanthropy. We acknowledge that sector leaders, those on the ground creating impact in their communities, are the experts in how to solve the issues facing that community, not necessarily us, nor the philanthropists that we work with. So IPAP allows you, the sector, to tell the philanthropists that we work with what your priorities are. We then use IPAP to verify that your organisation is an impactful and effective steward of community funds, and the philanthropists we work with then funds the projects that you tell them are important. All of our philanthropy at Perpetual is underpinned by a number of best practice, sector-forward principles that ensure equitable and impactful support for the community. We understand the need for paying what it takes. If philanthropists don't fund the true cost of projects, then it creates a starvation cycle that is inherently unsustainable. That's why IPAP puts very few limitations on the types of projects your organization can apply for and allows you to include the full costs of delivering a project. We understand the need for impact-focused funding because what matters most is that we help those that our organizations exist to help. We understand the need for reducing the burden of admin for nonprofit organizations, which is why a single application will potentially appeal to 1,100 funders, and why we're investing in a custom granting system that makes submissions easy. We understand the need for the community control of funding, which is why we allow the sector to put forward its priorities rather than us putting forward our priorities. We understand the need for funders to collaborate to democratize the philanthropic process and to deliver sustainability for the sector, which is why we facilitate co-funding between the trusts that we work with. We understand the need for unrestricted trust-based funding, which is why, again, we place very few limitations on the types of projects that you can put forward for funding. You could put forward a CEO's salary or a new CRM system if that was the highest priority for your organization to achieve impact. And we understand the need for continuous improvement and transparency in our processes, which is why we commit significant time and resources to helping the sector to submit strong applications, like this presentation and the other resources we publish on our website. All of the answers on how to submit a compelling application are included in these resources. There's no secrets. IPAP is the means by which we balance our fiduciary responsibilities as stewards of other people's philanthropic capital with the needs of the sector and the communities and environments that it supports. So that's an overview of what IPAP is and why it is. IPAP has now been running for 10 plus years, and we recently published some insights that we've gained over that decade period. So I'll share a few top-level insights from that data set. From 2015 to 2024, we've worked with our clients to distribute over $270 million via the IPAP process. Our team and external assessors have reviewed and assessed 15,000 applications from all parts of the charitable sector, and more than 3,000 of those applications have successfully received funding over that time. The number of funded applications per year has increased from 218 applications in 2015 to 364 applications in 2024. And the average grant amount over the 10-year period was around $78,000. This chart is particularly interesting, which shows the distributions by sector mapped over the 10-year period. A few things stand out to me in this chart. Social and community well-being, which is the purple line, health, the pink line, medical research, which is the green line, and education, the yellow line, make up the most significant portion of our funding mix. You can see those four lines up the top there. The predominant reason for this has to do with our old charitable trusts. Many of the trusts that we work with are nearly 100 years old, and some are older than that, and have grown significantly in value over that time. 100 years ago, when the trust was established and the philanthropic priorities of the trust were written into the trust deed, social and community well-being, health, medical research, and education were top philanthropic priorities. Other causes like animal welfare, arts and culture, and conservation and environment were not thought of as philanthropic priorities at that time. We inherit the philanthropic mandate of these old legacy trusts to this day, which leads to an overweight to those four sectors in our funding mix through IPAP. Arts and culture, conservation and environment, and animal welfare are smaller relative parts of the funding mix, but we do see that interest in these areas is growing all of the time, especially with the new philanthropists that we're partnering with every year. The other thing to call out on this graph is the noticeable uptick in health funding, which is the pink line, in 2022 in response to the COVID pandemic. Philanthropists saw the need to prioritise health program funding during that time. In 2023, coming out of COVID, we see that there's a spike in the health and medical research, which is the green line, which replaces that health funding and might indicate a strategic reconsideration from philanthropists to thinking about funding prevention rather than treating immediate need in health. The last insight I wanted to draw out from the decade of IPAP funding is the heartening shift from support being predominantly directed to new activities in 2015 to an equal mix of new and existing activities in 2024. Having been a non-for-profit fundraiser myself, I understand the temptation of creating new programs to receive funding. We all know that program priorities should lead fundraising priorities, but it is so easy to invent a new program just to secure a particular funder's commitment. The reality is that over the longer term, this iterative process can lead to drifting from the mission of an organization towards the funder's priorities, which can fuel the starvation cycle and over the longer term, make organizations less sustainable and potentially less impactful. So it's heartening to see that the philanthropists that we work with have come to see the strength in supporting organizations to deliver impactful existing activities. The flip side of this, though, is that part of the role that philanthropy can play, unlike other types of funding, is to be catalytic, to be the seed funding that is required to do innovative, higher-risk pilot programs that trial new methodologies, gather evidence, and allow for a more substantive case to be taken to other funders like government for more significant funding. So there's also benefit to organisations putting forward new projects to philanthropy where it makes sense to do so. We're proud of the fact that we now have an equal balance of existing and new activities supported through IPAP. So that was the 2015 through 2024 dataset, and I'll now give some insights from last year's IPAP funding round 2025. In 2025, we assisted the philanthropists that we work with to distribute a total of $128 million to the charitable sector. 73% of this $128 million goes directly to beneficiary organisations that are named explicitly in a will. So Perpetual does not have any discretion over granting. $34 million was distributed through the IPAP process, which is utilised where Perpetual has any discretion at all over granting as trustee. 184 funders utilised the program directly, with many more engaging with the program less directly. We received over 2,000 applications from over 1,100 non-profit organisations across the country and in every area of the charitable sector. The average grant was around $80,000 in 2025, which is a slight increase on the 10-year average. 17%, or 1 in 6 applications, were funded in 2025, a total of 340 funded applications. The reality is that there will always be so much more need in the community than can be met by philanthropy in general, and especially by the capital of the philanthropists who choose to utilise IPAP. So the reality is that IPAP is a highly competitive process. The process again distributed to projects in every state and territory of Australia. Just over 30% of funding went to projects with a national reach, and just shy of 8% went to projects delivered overseas. The lion's share of the state-based funding went to Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, which is a result of a few things. Firstly, many of the legacy trusts who utilise IPAP are based in these states and specify that distributions can only support projects in the state in which the trust is domiciled. So we inherit that geographic constraint on distributions. Secondly, most of the living philanthropists that we work with are based in these states, so they have an overweight to supporting projects in the communities in which they live. Where we have broader discretion over the geography of distributions, we aim to create geographic equity across states and territories, as well as across regional and rural settings. So they were the outcomes for the 2025 funding round. I'll now pass to Stevie to take us through the details of this year's IPAP funding round and to tell us how to craft a compelling application.
Now I'll be taking you through what the Impact Philanthropy application program looks like in practice, including the steps in the IPAP process, which questions are assessed, and key details about the upcoming grant round. IPAP is a best practice grant-making process, and it's underpinned by 4 key pillars: strategy, leadership, outcomes, and capability. Perpetual's team of experts assess every submission using criteria that I'll run you through shortly. I will note, for those of you working in medical research, the efficacy and viability of the research are also taken into consideration. After our assessment, each and every philanthropist has their own unique ways that they consider applications, and this can often change, so don't get bogged down by what you think will appeal the most to donors. After submissions close in December, the first step we undertake at Perpetual is checking each application's eligibility. I'll be taking you through the eligibility requirements a bit later in the video. Then, it's time for us to assess every eligible application. These are marked and scored based on select assessed questions, which I'll be taking you through shortly. We then shortlist high-quality applications and present them to interested donors. This is based on a variety of factors that we know about the generous philanthropists we work with at Perpetual. It might be a certain sector, a particular geographic region, a target demographic, or most often, a combination. Every donor is different, and a high-scoring application is the first step to be considered. In cases where Perpetual has been entrusted to steward the legacy of a philanthropist through a testamentary trust, we use the terms of their trust instruments to match high-scoring applications to their preferences. Once all funding decisions have been finalised, payments are processed in late June. All eligible organisations can submit up to 2 IPAP applications, except for hospitals, universities, and medical research institutes, who can submit up to 3. The maximum request per application is $120,000, but, as we noted earlier, the average grant size from IPAP is $80,000. Through IPAP, you can apply for anything except for retrospective funding, general appeals, or gifts to an individual. You might request funding for tangible things like equipment, or intangible things like operating costs or salaries. We encourage you to apply for whatever your area or areas of greatest need are. Our conversations with philanthropists are guided by what you tell us is essential. Incorporating some diversity between your submissions, such as applying for different amounts, can also broaden the pool of philanthropists that your organisation might resonate with. On the left of the screen here is the yearly scoring spread across every application submitted since 2021. On the right is the scoring spread for the successful applications last year. As you can see, higher scoring applications are more likely to receive funding. Each application receives a score out of 5, and 62% of successful submissions last year received at least a 4. This is why, regardless of your size, sector, or location, understanding those key pillars of strategy, leadership, capability, and outcomes is the first step towards success in IPAP. I'm now very pleased to take you through each of the accessible questions in the IPAP application. I'll be going into a fair amount of detail and do want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that goes into each IPAP submission you craft. I'll also note that the questions I'm about to discuss are just those that are formally assessed. There are plenty of other questions in the application, which philanthropists will also consider. The first accessible question asks you to list between 3 and 5 key performance indicators your organisation uses to measure efficient use of resources. This is an opportunity for you to demonstrate that your organisation is using its resources well to strive for a sustainable business model. This question is also referring to your organisation as a whole, not just the specific project you're applying for. The key takeaway for this question is to show how your organisation seeks to convert inputs, be they human, financial, or in kind, to outputs, like your programs and services which impact the community you serve. As you will know, every KPI needs a metric and a target, so be sure to include those in your response. Then, the next question we assess asks you to demonstrate how your organisation is performing against those KPIs. Whether or not you are meeting your targets will not affect your score, because assessors are looking for actual results that indicate your organisation is monitoring its progress. It's always good to see multiple years of data here too, so you can demonstrate that your organisation is tracking incremental change for each KPI. For both efficiency questions, it's also quite useful to answer in dot points. This allows you to be really clear without exceeding the word count. On the screen now, you can see some examples of strong efficiency KPIs. You might like to pause and take a screenshot, but these can also be downloaded from our website. The next accessible question asks you to list between 3 and 5 key performance indicators your organisation uses to measure how effective it is at achieving its mission. We recognise the importance of effectiveness for non-profit organisations because it demonstrates the alignment between strategy and mission. During assessment, we will look at your organisation's mission statement and strategic priorities, which we ask you earlier in the application. Although we don't assess those questions themselves, assessors will be looking for connections to both of them within your effectiveness KPIs. Similarly to the previous question, you want to include metrics and targets in your response. These might be percentages, ratios, or figures. Another reminder that these KPIs relate to your organisation broadly, not just the project within the application. Next, we assess how you demonstrate your organisation's performance against those KPIs. Use this as an opportunity to illustrate that the executive leadership and board of your organisation are measuring the progress towards delivering on your organisation's mission. Do ensure that you include specifics and actual results for each indicator. You don't need to go into a lot of narrative. Dot points are useful here too. As with the previous questions, you don't have to be tracking positively. You might be tracking negatively. That won't affect your score. We want to see that you are regularly checking in on your strategy and not getting sidetracked or experiencing mission drift. Here we have examples of strong effectiveness KPIs, but these will vary a lot depending on your organisation. These examples are also up on our website. Now, just to quickly recap on efficiency and effectiveness, efficiency is looking at your capabilities using your resources, and effectiveness is about your strategy and mission. After looking at your KPIs, the next question we assess asks you to provide 3 to 5 external forces or trends that are presenting challenges to your organisation. List them first, then provide further detail. Our experience has shown us that the ability to conduct an environmental analysis is crucial to an organisation's viability in the long term, to be effectively governed, and to achieve sustainable success. Think about economic, social, legislative, environmental, and other outside contextual factors that are going on around your organisation. They aren't things you can control, but they are things you need to be aware of. It's also important here to be specific about how those factors pertain to your organisation. One example that might resonate with you is public policy changes. This question is all about outside forces that mean you might have to adapt the way you work to achieve your organisation's mission. Something to leave out of your response here is reference to general funding or competition for funding. We already know that this is an underlying challenge and it's being felt across the sector. What will score well here is a clear demonstration that you understand the systemic issues impacting the environment you operate in. There's no need to include any sort of mitigation strategies here. Your answer must include at least 3 external forces and up to 5, but do be mindful of the word count. You also don't have to limit yourself to external forces that directly correlate with the activities of the project you're applying for. This is about your organisation holistically. The next assessed question asks you to provide 3 to 5 risks that affect your organisation. List them first, then describe and provide mitigation strategies. This question relates to your organisation's governance. We want to understand how your leadership team and board recognise and respond to risks that might affect your ability to continue operating. Common risk categories include financial, regulatory, strategic, operational, and reputational. But don't include a lack of funding as one of the risks here. We encourage you to use your organisation's risk register when entering your response, and be sure to highlight how each risk you have included is pertinent by briefly describing how it might impact your organisation's operations. And of course, don't forget to include your mitigation strategies for each risk. Our assessment is about your methodology. Assessors are looking to see that your organisation has informed strategies in place to safeguard against things that could affect operations negatively. Similarly to the previous question, you must include at least 3 risks and up to 5, being mindful of the word count. Finally, in the initial assessment phase, the only question we score that relates directly to the project or activity you are proposing asks you to list your project's expected outcomes and provide details on how you will measure these. Our experience with donors has shown us the importance of a strong outcomes focus within organisations seeking philanthropic funding, as this demonstrates a commitment and drive to achieving mission. This question is assessed in 2 parts. The first part is your expected outcomes. We're looking for evidence-based goals that outline your project's impact. You will be aware of the differences between outputs and outcomes, but as a quick refresher, here's an example to illustrate what we mean. An organisation working to improve literacy for children might have a project that provides books and reading comprehension tools to schools. That's a wonderful initiative, and those tools and books given out are the outputs. The outcome is the increase in literacy rates within the population. What to focus on in this question are those outcomes that happen as a consequence of producing outputs. They are what move the dial on the problem your organisation is trying to solve. Here, it can be useful to incorporate SMART goals that are specific, measurable, attributable, relevant, and time-bound. The second part we assess is about the framework for measurement that your organisation has in place. What this may involve could range from surveys of the participants in a program all the way to an externally commissioned longitudinal research study. Assessors are looking to see that you have identified how and what you'll measure. Make sure you are specific in how it will be attributable to your project, and be sure to consider the causal links between your activities and the outcomes you're striving to achieve. So those are the questions that make up the formal assessment process. Now for some key details about the upcoming grant round. To be eligible for an IPAP grant, your organisation must be a registered charity with the ACNC and/or be endorsed as DGR1. If your organisation is under administration, is not a going concern, has an ACNC compliance action against it, or if you have an overdue acquittal with Perpetual, your organisation will be deemed ineligible. Applications will also be deemed ineligible if they exceed the maximum number permitted per organisation, if they request more than $120,000, or if the bank details don't match the organisation's name. All ineligible applicants will be notified by email. If you're applying for a medical research grant, we understand that Ethics Committee approval may not yet be obtained. Provided that ethics approval is pending, you can still submit. You will then be required to confirm whether approval has been granted by the 1st of March 2026, and if it has not, your application will then become ineligible. Here we have some of the most commonly asked questions from applicants. Other common queries are listed with responses on our website, including around auspicing arrangements and timelines for when you'll be notified of the outcome, as well as lots of other logistical IPAP details. We encourage you to read through those if you haven't already. So, how many applications should you submit? As we mentioned earlier, every organisation can submit 2 applications except universities, hospitals, and medical research institutes who can submit 3. It is up to your organisation to decide, based on your internal capacity, how many to put forward. We recognise that each application you craft takes a lot of careful consideration and effort, and also that submitting more than one can allow you to apply for a couple of the different needs at your organisation. What feedback can we provide? Due to the scale and nature of the IPAP program, we are unable to provide individual feedback to organisations. What are donors interested in funding this year? Philanthropy is incredibly personal and ever-evolving by nature. Not only is there a lot of variety between different donors, but giving strategies are constantly developing and shifting. No 2 are the same, so it is up to your organisation to put your best foot forward and apply for what you need most. Can you apply for multi-year funding? No, IPAP applications are for single-year funding only. Multi-year funding opportunities are led by the philanthropists, and that process is by invitation only. Can you apply for the same project as last year? Yes, you are welcome to apply for the same project as you have applied for previously if you wish, regardless of if that application was successful or unsuccessful. Finally, can you contact donors directly to say thank you? If you successfully receive funding through IPAP, it's great to express your appreciation to the donors. Please send any correspondence that you would like shared with a philanthropist through to philanthropy@perpetual.com.au and we will pass it on. If any opportunities arise for direct engagement with a donor, we'll reach out to you. If you have a question that we haven't answered here, please check the guidelines and FAQs which can be downloaded from our website. The 2026 IPAP grant round will open on Monday, the 27th of October 2025 and close on Friday, the 5th of December at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. This is when the system will close off and we won't be able to accept applications after this point. To close out, we want to thank you for your time watching this video. From the team here at Perpetual, it is an immense privilege to be a part of this sector and to learn about the incredible ways you are striving to advance communities, improve livelihoods, and create a better environment for generations to come. We look forward to reading your applications and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.